Tool, 10,000 Days. Whew. Okay. Fingers crossed. No copyright claims. Or at least hopefully not enough that it would be considered a strike. Because I've been lucky. I just want to give people the taste of the record of what they're going to hear. That's how I do what I do. And the only way I can now do it is through having to be in a car. So, anyways. This is hopefully up until Fear Inoculum, the final one. Finally out of the way. Okay, 10,000 Days. I'm be honest, I was a bit underwhelmed with this thing upon its release. Or, well, actually, I take it back. I didn't get to actually get to it until later on. Kind of wound up buying, I think I wound up buying this album around the same time I did Lateralis. So when I had to literally go from Lateralis to this, I understand certain people being underwhelmed. Though I don't know if I'd go as far as to say a Perfect Circle comparisons. Maybe at times, though it's weird, given that of all the albums to have the band be compared to Perfect Circle, it's the one where Howardale's not even involved. It's the One Tool album where Billy Howardale himself isn't even involved in guitar tech, as guitar technician or whatever else he's been credited for over the past few albums and such. Also, the last to have Bill, or I want to say the first name's Bill. I could be wrong and I'm butchering the dude's name. No, it's Danny Biltrix or some Biltrix. I think I could be confusing it, but the guy that I have been producing past three, no longer. Instead, we got Joe Barresi. Prior to, he did a couple Queens of the Stone Age albums. I mean, he's done other stuff. I think he might have done Breaking Benjamin stuff. But in between moments of this record and the new one coming out, he did a couple albums from a band I love enough that, if not for them, and maybe possibly bands like 10 Years, I probably wouldn't have found a way to finally bother to dive into Tool and realizing how good they themselves as musicians really are. And, and so it's something I never got to explain in my past reviews, and I'm going to probably reiterate it in my Fear Inoculum, and that's going to be a much more rougher review. This one, I knew that album had some flaws, and I forgot to mention those, which is probably a good thing, because I really wanted that to be more of a proper rave compared to my previous ones. But this one, I can't say I rave, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's not great. It just was good and solid, and that was it for me at the time. The album has grown on me since, but not enough for me to say that I would prefer it over Lateralis or Anima. Though debatably whether or not I put it furthest over Undertow, and it makes me wonder what I'm going to expect of Fear Inoculum. Or I'm hoping for at least a better release or an more idealistic follow-up that would make up for what I got from certain aspects of this record. Granted, I do love this thing though. The albums, and plus the album artwork here, you get a 3D little thing. I mean, it's just kind of cool. I mean, but you gotta look at it this way and stuff like that. It's kind of fun, and and also a few other interesting album versions. First track, as you've heard a little tidbit of, Vicarious. Basically how we all are when it comes to certain things, especially when it comes to things on the news, and then just when it comes to things like even our TV shows and stuff, when it comes to dealing with violence, we mostly like to live vicariously through all these other people that are just characters and stuff, and it's kind of gotten to a point where we're kind of almost that way now, even with the superhero boom and stuff like that, which wasn't a thing then as much, or it was getting there, but we weren't quite there until MCU happened, or the first Iron Man happened, and then opened up the possibilities, and then the later films did what they could to, give us something, even though the two films that followed didn't live up to the first Iron Man movie. But what we did get in the following films of Thor, which was fine, and Captain America was fine, First Avenger being fine, and eventually we learned to love those two movies more. And they were good enough to get us through, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, beside the point. I mean, just how we all are with that. And John B, I'm not as definitely interesting. I think also has like a nice little wah-wah thing, or at least a talk box thing Adam Jones decides to do with his guitar, which is pretty cool. Something they haven't done. I guess you could say they haven't done before for themselves. But I think one of the bigger highlights is more known the 2-part deep cut, which is essentially, I guess, their parabola kind of a thing. But a lot more personal to Maynard, and I think it's more the lyricism and what is the story upon this. Given that, going back and talking about Perfect Circle in that, Judith, one of the band's biggest songs, and a great debut that they've not yet, the band themselves didn't exactly top, but they were able to maintain that band. But that song had something to do with what happened with his mother, Judith Marie Keenan, who he also paid enough tribute that he would name his own winery company after. Lo and behold, that track was about, his issues with his mother's condition that had happened since he was 11 and what had happened with all that. And apparently she was a religious woman, and because of situations like this, he was not. And plus the whole way that her community treated her because of this, as if she was cast out, as if she was, because of this, she was sinful. And that, just how easily these people that were ushered her in and made her part of this community, all of a sudden, once she got sick, just chose to turn on her all of a sudden. Just like, and while Maynard needed these people the most, that were treating her, that were all treating her special because of their shared faith or whatever, only to treat her like crap because of her illness or something. And then act like they're more holy art thou and pray and all this stuff when they were, and Maynard just calling them out and calling them hypocrites and calling them full of shit. And that the only thing in close to faith he'll ever get is the fact that his own mother still stuck by it in a very, I want to say Tobias, I believe it was Tobias. I'm trying to remember the prophet in the Old Testament. But it was kind of one of those things for her, and although clearly Maynard isn't, and doesn't, because of his references, though I give him credit for, even though it's backwards from what the Son of the Cross actually is, if you're going out of hierarchy for the Holy Trinity, that's probably he's working his way up. So I give him props for that. I give him props for that. Even though I know he's doing it out of mere sarcasm and it's just to throw a read between the lines type of a thing. And I can't exactly blame him. Plus, these guys aren't exactly Catholic, so that's my bull. That's me being, that's my BS, and maybe that's makes me seem more hypocritical in that regard. And I'm hoping I'm not, because I'm starting to call BS when it comes to this, and stuff like this is what kind of has turned me off into faith, and to the point where I have these moments where this song kind of comes into me and I understand that, and that my mom still sort of is, but kind of sort of feels like she's kind of among them, the hypocrites that are true, the hypocrites that say that go as far as to put her in, just the heretics and the heathens that are true, that claim that they are holy art thou, but are really just zealous Christians, and just, I hate that too. And I relate in that regard with this. And then the pot called Kettle Black, furthering the whole idea of hypocrisy, but more so directed towards politicians as opposed to the religious people involved with that. Lippin Conjuring does its own little thing. It's pretty cool as well. It's a nice little instrumental thing that's kind of sort of, I think, has a Native American kind of thing to it. It's pretty cool. And I guess it serves as the middle point that kind of separates the first half of the track listing from the second half, which technically starts with Lost Keys, Blame Hoffman. A nice little riff and stuff going on, and has some weird story thing that I guess somewhat gets followed up with Rosetta Stone, and which feels more like old school Tool lyrically in the 90s era, more so kind of a thing. Intention is probably the weakest track here, probably didn't need to go on as long as it did. But it does wind up leading us into the track Right Into, which is probably amongst the song. I mean, Rosetta Stone has some good riffs, though. I'll give it that. But Right Into is probably one of the better overall tracks amongst the backtrack listing. And I feel like they could have just ended it with just that track instead of giving us the Vagina Tres, whatever that's supposed to be translated into. I'm not entirely sure. Source I chose to go to didn't exactly specify, but anyway, it's really more of a weird noise thing. It's slightly reminiscent of something that you probably would have heard off of Mantra, and maybe a mix of Cesro Semability or Serial Semability. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. It's been a while. I didn't really look on that, but anyway, overall, the album I found to be disappointing to the point where I'm as long to where I don't expect, despite the length that we've had to wait from this album going in of 13 years, going from this album going into what we're going to experience hopefully Friday, for all of us are finally going to experience Friday, whether we're streaming it now or just finally listening to it through the physical copies, whether it be through vinyl or CD, more likely in this case for me, CD. As you can kind of tell by the casing. But anyways, and this album is just, kind of feels watered down to just kind of cater to more radio-friendly airplay, I feel like. Because the last album technically didn't, even though that album sold a lot better too. Personally, in comparison, I think it did, because it wound up triple platinum eventually. So, at least I think it still did. At least I think it did. My last album I talked about, Letter Lawless. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. Now, overall, unfortunately for me, all I could say to start was a thumbs up. It eventually grew to being a rock, but just like barely etched out. And it's still, I realize it is a great record for what it is, but it's more so in certain tracks, but not as an album as a whole. At least in comparison to the cerebral experience you got from the last record. So that's kind of part of it. But it's not an unlistenable record. It's enjoyable. It's just, in comparison to the last record, it just comes off as disappointing. Or at least the way that they have progressed over, and this one just, which I understand some criticisms on it. But other than that, I enjoyed this album a lot. But I did enjoy this album. From having heard the title track, I Fear Inoculum, I'm looking forward to the next record. I'm hopeful, even though there are some people out there that say this sucks when I don't understand it. I mean, Fear Inoculum at least comes off definitely a little bit better, I guess, and you definitely get a feel like, I wonder what good ideas are going to happen on this record. I'm just looking forward to what we can get out of Fear Inoculum at this point, and I can't wait to finally talk about that with you guys. But it's going to be a while. It'll probably be Tuesday by the time I finally get a chance to talk about it, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are other bigger names out there that are going to finally get a chance to talk about it themselves. So, as far as I'm concerned, 10,000 days, which is actually how long it was from what happened in, I believe, Jimmy, going forward to this point, to the point of the time frame within when she had passed. And it definitely shows a different perspective of where he is about how his things with his mother was, and it shows he's grown and matured since what happened with Judith and Jimmy through that two-part section. Even though I still prefer Parabola, by the way, and it's just a track overall and just the experience of it in and of itself. But this is an experience, and you do kind of get some sense of emotional, or like, at least if not even close to man-tearing, you can at least still say, you give one of those faces and be like, dang. It's one of those types of tracks. But anyway, Right Into is also pretty good. It's just, and it does deal with, how God has given us all these, the free will, and in turn we have basically used it against each other to just for our own selfish needs, and wind up just killing each other over things instead of just trying to be peaceful and stuff, and which sucks. And Right Into is pretty, But overall, like I said, it's fine. It's still a good album to experience. I would still prefer the past two albums a little more. Debatably, whether or not it's here nor there, whether or not I consider this album better than Undertow. Maybe to a degree it eventually ages better, but I didn't think it like hit as hard. Undertow, it's still a two-way street. I understand it making somewhat sense if you do pick this over Undertow. So anyway, though I'm more hopeful that at least the new album finds this way of being this middle ground of what was their pure masterclassness, that is Anima and Lateralis, and what we've gotten from this record here in 10,000 Days and Undertow's kind of thing of the more stripped back sound type of way of doing things, because this new album is going to be more closer to something of a Lateralis type, despite some word of mouth saying that it's going to be more like Undertow. Though if it's more like Undertow, hopefully it's more like the the one passage in this one song off of the Apoptosis record from Allegiant. If it's like that, I wouldn't mind it, but I think that by that standard it would come across more like 10,000, like that, but with 10,000 Days production. But anyway, that's my thoughts and ramblings of this album, and my thoughts going into Fear Inoculum. Primarily this record, what did you think of 10,000 Days? Leave a comment below, let me know. Rock that like button, thrust if you must, as always. Also, link in the description below to my Facebook page where you can like and follow me there, hopefully. And please hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell just in case you want to see more of my videos. And as always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. I will see you in the next video, which will hopefully be the new Tool and probably another Schmidt Knox. But anyway, more than likely, I don't know if I'll see another film. I'm bouncy here and there with it, but whatever. Anyways, take care, y'all.